How's it going, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the James Loud Podcast. And today, our special guest is the legendary Kyle Kushman, High Times Magazine, internet personality, the guy who was willing to show his face for the plant long before most of us. And he kind of set the bounds for other people like myself to be able to have a platform like this to talk about cannabis on. So thank you so much for coming on the show. We've hung out and met. We've hung out a couple of times in the past, and it's really great to have you on the show.
Wow, James, thanks. That's a really nice introduction. I really appreciate it. Yeah, it's been 30 plus years as Kyle Kushman now, and I think I've pretty much become Kyle Kushman, you know?
You have embodied Kyle Kushman. Absolutely.
I've grown into the shoes.
Yeah, for sure. And those are big shoes to fill. I mean, you've really paved the way for so many people, not just myself, but so many people in the industry to be able to do what we do now. Without people like you, there's a handful of other people that were really willing to, like Jack Herrera.
It's Herrera.
It's
Herrera like terror.
Okay, Herrera like terror. Okay, we need to get that right on the podcast, guys.
Just remember, Herrera like terror.
Absolutely. So yeah, you've paved the way and done a lot of good stuff. I mean, you've won cannabis cups.
Yes.
You've been an advocate for legalization. You've really kind of pushed the bounds as far as veganics. We can even talk veganics today. I think veganics pushing boundaries, and your strawberry cough that you've won multiple awards with has been legendary. So
my strawberry cough is a little bit of a heavy statement because, as you and I both know, I did not create the strawberry cough, but I was gifted it and happily carried it with me to this very day.
You elevated it to the level it's at now, and your name is synonymous with it. So I feel like even though you didn't breed it, when I think of strawberry cough, I think of Kyle Kushman. So,
well, you heard last night I went out to give out an award, and all of a sudden people shouted strawberry. So I went cough, and then I went, when I say strawberry, you say, and I did a couple of rounds of strawberry, and I was like, wow, that was fun. That was completely impromptu. So it's sliding doors, brother.
Yeah.
When I took my job at High Times, I had to quit growing weed. I couldn't handle the pressure of both. And so I started slinging packs again. Yeah. And my dealer was in Bridgeport, Connecticut. So every couple of weeks, I drive from Brooklyn to Bridgeport, Connecticut, pick up some weed. And one time my buddy, he's like, hey man, I got this really good friend. He lives around the block. He said, he really wants to meet you. Would you go over there with me? I said, sure. So we hop in his car, we go around the block, we go to his friend's house. And I go in and, oh man, I'm so excited to meet you and everything. And he shows me a bag where he has a piece of weed in it the size of my pinky nail. And he's like, I'm really sorry, man. I wish I had more, but this is strawberry cough. This is all, you want to smoke it? And I was like, well, not really. I'm stoned off my ass anyways, but hey, I want to show it to you. And he takes me down into his basement and he's got a little garden. It wasn't flowering, just some vegging plants, being polite. And on the way up the stairs, he's like, taps me on the shoulder. And he's like, hey, Kyle, would you like one? And I looked at this plant and it was literally in a Dixie cup. You remember those bathroom little Dixie? And
absolutely.
It had about 2 inches of surface area of leaf. It was the tiniest little pinky-sized clone. I said, of course, thank you. I'll take it. And I said, can you get me a bag? And so he went into his pantry and he took a lunch bag, a new lunch bag, flacked it open and gave it to me. And I said, thank you. And I drove it 3 hours back to New York.
Wow.
And I brought it in the apartment, brought it up into my apartment, thinking I'm just going to throw it away, because I don't grow. And I took it out of the bag. And as I took it out of the bag, I got a whiff of strawberries.
Wow.
And I did like a double, a triple, a quadruple take and smelled the bag. And I'm thinking to myself, did this guy pull something on me? Like, I know I saw him take that bag out of the closet. It was a new bag. I'm like, this is not possible. This tiny little clone is giving me the aroma of strawberries.
Yeah.
And I couldn't throw it away. So I gave it to my German friend over in Manhattan. I said, you will grow this. And 3 years later, it was the most popular delivery weed in New York City. And then a few years later, it became the strain name they used in Children of Men.
Wow. Really cool. I love good origin stories. And, it's like, had you not gotten the plant at the time you got it, who knows? It may have gotten lost along the wayside. It may have never been elevated to the point where it was winning cups. There's other things that have gone, Strawberry Cough times OG Kush. That's Bruce Banner, right? So, I mean, there would be no Bruce Banner. It's just amazing how these genetics and these small points in time where we interact with these things, you know, and recognizing that it was special, being able to elevate that to the status it is today, you know.
You know, at that time, I'd already been growing for 8 or 10 years, and I had experience with, we didn't even call it terpene profiles back then, right? It was just the nose, remember? The nose,
right? Absolutely.
And yeah, it's that sliding door thing, man. It's just like, I just very easily could have said, you know, I'm not growing.
Yeah.
I didn't smoke it. It's a cool name, and chucked it in the bin.
Sure.
You know, and it would have made its way out somehow, but it certainly wouldn't have become what it did. So I'm just grateful. I'm really grateful to be associated with it.
I feel you. There's so many blessings that we've been gifted along the way. And it's like, with something like strawberry cough, genetic preservation wasn't what it is today. It was much harder to keep stuff alive for the long run. You know, there's so many things I've lost along the wayside. Like so many great things that we had, so many great things that my friends had, where I had at one point and I gave it to somebody to hold, or I gave it to multiple people to hold, family members even, where it was like, they're going to hold it forever and it's not there anymore. And we've lost some amazing stuff, or the cops took it. You know, the cops took it on a raid, and that happened to so many people, you know, and you just don't hear those stories anymore. So
I told you about my Breedus interruptus story. You know, I've 2 times I had one time it was almost 6 or 7 or 8 years. Another time was 4 or 5 years of a project taken out of my hands by a bust, you know? And so, yeah, I mean, the strawberry cough to this day is my favorite strain to smoke. I haven't found anything that has the clarity of high that literally I'm going to get baked and I may have a brain fart.
Sure.
And I may forget what I'm saying, but that happens to people who don't smoke pot too. You know?
Absolutely.
But other than that, it's extremely stimulating creatively. And that means that if you like to ride bikes, you're going to ride your bike a little farther. If you like to mountain climb, you're going to get into that, you know, and
but it's different than Blue Dream, because I feel like Blue Dream is similar. Right. Blue Dream's similar. And there's several other things that are similar, but it's different.
You know what? I used to call Blue Dream strawberry cough light. Yeah. Because my wife, when we first met, she couldn't handle strawberry cough. It was too strong. Yeah. And she absolutely loved Blue Dream. So I started calling Blue Dream strawberry cough light.
I feel you.
You know? And Blue Dream, what is that funny quote about Blue Dream? You know, if you say you hate Blue Dream, you don't know nothing about weed. Yeah. And if you say you like Blue Dream, you don't know nothing about weed.
Well, Craig was on the show. If you say you love Blue Dream, you don't know anything about weed. But if you say you hate Blue Dream, you really don't know anything about weed. It's one of those, and there's truth to that.
You know, there's so much I literally was in a parking lot in Marin County, and I was bringing some strawberry cough to a friend, Molly. Her name was Molly, and she literally, as a gift, she said, check out this new strain my friend created. It's called Blue Dream. Wow. Do you know who the creator of Blue Dream was?
The Hayes brothers.
The Hayes brothers. So I don't know if that would, but anyways, I tried the Blue Dream like the summer it came out, you know? Right. And that, you know, who can argue with a strain that is enlivening? Yeah. That tastes good, that grows like a son of a bitch.
Yeah. It has the best structure, the best, as far as roots, it has roots.
That's what strawberry cough doesn't have. Strawberry cough has the structure above the ground. Mm-hmm. It's this wonderful chunky haze. Yeah. But below the ground, it's a little bit finicky.
And Blue Dream has the best root terps out of anything I've ever smelled.
What are root terps?
Root terps are when you basically pull the root ball up and you give them a nice whiff.
Get out.
Try Blue Dream. And it has a big, like the root ball is big, right? And it's super vigorous.
This is a thing?
There's tons of terps in the roots.
How long has root terps been a thing?
I call them root terps. I don't know what else to call them, but root terps are real. You could, full on.
I've never sniffed my roots.
Oh yeah. You could probably extract root terps. I would guarantee that you could extract them.
I'm going to go home and sniff some root terps right now.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. And Blue Dream has that the blueberry is super intense. So
that is hilarious. I truly never heard of that. You know what else is a new thing? A new tech. Nothing is new.
Right.
Really. I love the young kids think that their favorite song is actually written by the band that they like.
Oh, yeah. When it was written in the 60s or 70s.
By Frank Sinatra or something.
Or the Beatles, it's like.
You know that there's that new tech. See, I can't keep a train of thought. That new tech where they you go out in the field and you resin gland test things in water.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, there's the resin dial.
I thought that was, now that's not that old. People haven't been doing that on camera for a long time.
Right.
Right?
But they have been doing similar stuff in the 90s. I mean,
but everything doesn't get popularized nor passed along.
Sure.
Right?
A lot of it was, because we talk about cannabis, there's Oaksterdam University, which I think does a great job at what they do as far as education. But I think this industry is a mentorship, apprenticeship type industry. It was for the longest time, it was like the best way to learn would be to learn from somebody who is doing it really well. You could learn by trial and error, but it takes a really long time. But if you found somebody that would take you under their wing, they would educate you and tell you everything that they know to make you better. And yeah, very much like the culinary world I talk about on my podcast. But that was the beauty of, and that is the beauty of the industry. So if you're a good person and somebody sees something that they like or that they feel that you're worthy, then they teach you and they educate you and show you all the tricks. But that stuff stayed very closed doored, right? It wasn't shared with everybody.
See, and that's really kind of, I've always been the antithesis of that. Now, when I grew guerrilla style, I don't think I knew another grower.
Wow.
Like not one. I was truly underground. I'm trying to think I did know a few other, like you would meet at a concert or you would, and then they would be like from another, but I did not actually know any other growers.
Yeah.
That's how underground I was. And,
wow.
And,
where'd you get your information from back then? High Times Magazine?
I did. And I bought myself out of High Times Magazine. I bought myself the Grower's Bible.
Yeah.
And I bought both of them. It was the Indoor Grower's Bible, and then there was the just the larger one that included all the other information.
Right.
And one day, one of my pot dealer from back then, I was just selling weed. He comes in my house. I had just rented a brand new condominium with a walk-in closet, and he says, my pot dealer, he says, "Hey man," he says, "if you let me grow in your closet, I'll teach you how to grow." And I swear to you, at that time. You know how you don't know how every plant grows in the world. Like
no.
How does lychee grow? Is it a tree or is it underground? Like, I don't know. You don't know how every plant grows. Well, at that time, I had no concept of that you could grow marijuana indoors. Like none. Like I knew it was a plant. You can't grow every plant indoors.
Yeah.
Back in 1986. So he says, "I'll teach you how to grow if you let me grow in your closet." And he brought over an Emily's Garden, one of those first ebb and flow from Hydrofarm.
Oh, yeah.
It's a 2.5 gallon reservoir with a tray atop, and filled with perlite, And he brings me over a tub of green powder and a tub of purple powder, and he brings me over some pH test strips and 400 watt HID with a conversion bulb, right?
Nice.
And he says, and all he says is, you do 1 teaspoon per gallon of this, you change water at this, you pH it, you change the water every week, and then when it's time to, I'll tell you when it's time to flip the lights. Then you start using this powder, and you pH it, and you put it in, you change the water every week. And the first buds that I grew, my first harvest, well, no, they weren't that big. They were the size of soda cans.
Wow.
They were the size of a 12-ounce soda can.
Yeah.
And I looked in this little closet and I said to myself, "Self, your life is never going to be the same."
Wow.
And a few days later, somebody who I had told about the garden while I was at work threw a 3-pound dumbbell weight through my back window and came in and stole it all.
Yeah.
The first harvest I ever grew, right? And my good friend Danny Pollock came over that night. Big guy, 6'4" or something. And I had to tell him what happened. And he picked me up by my neck with one hand. I mean, not like really high, but as hard as he could with the air. And I thought I was about to get, one of these in the face. And he just kind of threw me back on my bed because the closet was in my bedroom. And the very first harvest I ever grew taught me how to grow, but it was ripped off.
Yeah.
And there was many, I got
Hey, that
robbed.
happened to my brother too. Growing up, I remember seeing that.
I got robbed by Philadelphia narcotics detectives in New Jersey.
Wow.
I know for a fact it was cops. They robbed me.
Wouldn't be the first time that's happened.
So, these are, it's a life, man. It's a real life. It's everybody does things for different reasons.
Yeah.
And I did it for myself.
Yeah.
I did it for myself.
And how old were you?
When
you started?
Yep. I was probably, I out-processed out of the Army at 21. I was 21 or 22 years old. Nice. Well, maybe I was 23. It was a couple years out, 23 or 24.
Yeah.
When I started growing, and I'm 58 now.
Nice.
Yeah.
So it's been a while.
Yeah.
It's the landscape has changed drastically. And the amount of knowledge it's pretty wild, because even though it is, and it can be a mentorship type thing, you can watch podcasts like your podcast and learn how to grow. You can watch YouTube and learn how to grow.
Right.
You can read magazines. There's so many different things.
Isn't that great?
It's great. And the knowledge is out there. If you really want to do it, it's out there. You can just go do it. You can go to grow shops. Even if you live in Texas, there's grow shops.
It's like Bob Ross. You remember the old Bob Ross show?
Absolutely.
Right? You know what? Bob Ross, people say sometimes I have mannerisms like him. But you know what the cool thing about, I thought, what Bob Ross was? He had a special characteristic. And that was that he could make every single person who watched his show feel like if you wanted to, you could go down to Frank's Crafts, pick up some supplies and come home and do that.
Right.
That's been my motivation.
Nice.
To make it feel like if you just kind of listen a little bit, watch, go get yourself some equipment, you can do that.
Yeah, I think we need more motivating people like that. I mean, I think we have a lot of them.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
There's a lot of people sharing stuff. And there's a lot of good podcasts. Your podcast is excellent. There's
likewise.
Thank you. Yeah, First Smoke of the Day. They do a great job. Good Pizza podcast. The Seeds to Harvest podcast. We had Rue on a while back, and really cool. And there's lots of good podcasts. So, and I think it's so much different than throughout history, because I feel like now we're at this point where we're really painting a true picture of what the industry looks like and what the people go through and what the people have gone through. It's not just from the perspective of a small group of people. Now it's the perspective of thousands of people.
It's hard to push history on these young folks these days. Yeah. Not impossible.
It's not impossible.
There are open minds.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of this fucking smack me up. 75% THC I heard the other day. My ass, you're not smoking weed, a flower that's 75% THC.
No.
You believe that? I'm looking at you like, you believe that?
Oh, I can make the lab test to 75 with a bunch of keef.
That's
not even keef, but you can get THCA probably and just coat it.
But you
roll it and coat it. And I mean,
sure.
But that's not real.
Why have we not enlisted science to do a simple study? I mean, they've already done it with other agricultural plants.
Yeah.
They can tell you what the max brick level of an apple is.
Sure.
Apple can only have this much sugar.
Yeah.
Well, why can't science tell us what the max THC through math? Math will tell you it has to have so much other constituents.
Right.
Cellulose, fiber, blah, 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 So how much of it could possibly be THC?
Just to support the THC, there's so many other things at play. Well, and cannabinoids. Even
that's
if we look
at discussion. Right. I just want to stop bullshitting people with the number, with the percentage. Not that we'll discuss whether it matters so much.
Yeah.
But I'd like it to be accurate.
Yeah, well, I feel like that's one thing that needs more oversight. Most of it doesn't need more oversight, but the testing across the board needs to. We're going legalization, right? As far as legalization is concerned, testing needs to go and have more oversight and more consistency. And I think as a whole across the United States, there should be some consistency with testing. So a person goes and buys this flower here or there or whatever state you're in, and they get consistent results. So if you're going for a product and it's 23% THC, you know what you're getting to a degree with, even though it doesn't tell the whole picture. We both know that, right?
It is relatable. It's not insignificant.
It's not insignificant. It's not the whole story. Like you can smoke some.
It does relate to the potency.
It does.
It does. It's just not the whole story. I don't want people thinking that, it doesn't have anything to do with how high it's going to get you, because it does.
Right. But you can smoke some 12% Malawi.
Right.
And it will get you to where you don't want to talk to people.
But that's a rarity.
Yeah.
If you were growing out all kinds of crappy cultivars that only came out at 12%, the majority of them are going to be crappy and not get people high. Sure. So it's a rarity. So most of the time, the THC percentage does have relevance. That's all I'm saying. Mm-hmm. You just got to put it in its proper place.
We do. Right. We do. I agree. And there just needs to be more consistency and less bullshitting. Right. And
is that the world in general or not?
It is.
Especially us stoners, man. Come on.
Well, but now there's so much motivation from these testing labs to inflate the numbers, and for the,
it's like the political revolving door.
Right.
You got a testing company. Yep. You're only one. You're the one and only when it first starts. So you could get a relationship with the competitions, and then the relationships grow, and other ones come out, and they say, "We'll do it cheaper."
Right. Well, as a manufacturer, you want the highest results possible, and as a testing lab, you want to get the most manufacturers possible using you. So you want the highest test results possible. So it sucks that it's like that. It really does.
Maybe everything just needs to be double verified.
Double verified.
Testing it once is not enough. You have to go to a lab that's at least 100 miles away from the other one. You need 2 certifications.
In some states, you can send whatever sample in you want. In other states, they get to pick the sample out of a larger source, right? And so there's no consistency across the board. And it's going to have to happen on a federal level with federal legalization.
It will. We'll get there.
We'll get there.
We are. I mean, come on. We're moving forward. We're making
progress. We're absolutely making progress.
Look, everything. The only thing that's maybe taken a back seat to progress is the actual cannabis culture itself.
Right.
And I haven't given up. I'm not a fatalist. I mean, that's part of my mission here. I want to make sure people are still smoking a joint 20 years from now and not acting like it's an old fogey thing, if it's not in a pen. Who are you, Gramps? But the culture that reared me is important to me.
I agree.
I mean, I can't understate it. I from high times to being welcomed into the heart of the Emerald Triangle as a journalist. You don't think I got some threats while living up there too?
Right.
The whole thing, it's a wonderful, nearly every good person I've met in my life is somehow related to cannabis. I met my wife because I consented to teach the first Oaksterdam University class that they taught out of state was in Michigan. And Dale called me up and she said, I can't offer you much money, a $250 honorarium, but I'll fly you out. Would you like to teach a class in Detroit? And that's where I met my wife.
Wow.
Could have very easily said no to that.
Right.
So it's sliding doors, man. And all the doors that cannabis opened for me are just, even the times I went to jail, I could, I got a scar on my leg from a motorcycle accident. And if I didn't have that motorcycle accident, I never would have met High Times.
Yeah.
I mean, it just, the place that I moved after that is why I walked into that head shop.
Yeah.
And if I didn't have that motorcycle accident, I never would have.
Well, and I think so many people are afraid of making mistakes in life. That's one of my biggest takeaways through this whole thing of existence, right? Is don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't look, when you fail, failing's okay. Failing is a good learning experience a lot of times. You can take the good out of every situation. And, sometimes the things where it's so counterintuitive, this thing we call life, you're like, you think it's one way when you're younger, and then you realize a lot of that is the complete opposite. What's important in life,
It's not, don't be afraid to fail because you should be afraid when you're taking risks.
Yeah.
But see, it's not all about accepting that participation trophy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
For sure.
And no risk, no reward.
Yeah.
And you got to want it.
You got to want it. And you want it. You got to want to do it at a high level, right? At the same time, now more than ever.
Maybe not to start, right? But you got to want something.
Right.
And then you have to
be passionate
have some
about
dedication.
It. Yeah. Passion
and
and
then
dedication.
you have to find focus.
Right.
And my problem has always been focus.
Right.
That's why I don't have big businesses and, I'm a meager existence kind of guy, because all I really need is good food, love, contentment, a little bit of serenity, a little bit of, I don't need a mansion. I don't even want a mansion. Yeah. I don't want a mansion that I have to guard with guard dogs and cameras. I just want autonomy. I want to be able to make my own decisions.
Yeah.
And so I guess I got what I wanted.
Yeah. Well, that's great.
It is great.
I mean, yeah. And it's funny because when you're younger, you know enough to make yourself dangerous, when you're as far as with everything is concerned. But as you get older, you start learning more about things. And by the time you're in your 40s, you realize you've just scratched the surface on most of it. And you're just starting to appreciate life. I mean, I think, and then as you get into your 50s, I don't know yet because I'm not there, but I'm assuming you just get smarter and smarter.
I got married at 45, 46.
Wow.
No, wait. I'm going to be 58. I got married at 49.50. I got married at 49.50 for the first time. I'd been engaged a couple of times, but I wouldn't go back and do it all over.
Me neither.
I mean, you always say, if I knew what I knew now.
Yeah.
But you don't get to do that.
No, it's not part of it. It's not part of the deal.
And so what I'm doing is I'm kind of giving props to the young ones who do have to do it now. It's a lot harder.
Yeah.
It's a lot harder. Everything is not, it may be easier because we have a lot more things we can do by pushing a button.
Yeah.
But you don't learn anything by pushing a button.
No.
The car starts, it takes you where you want to go. Nowadays, you don't even, you don't learn anything that way. And me growing up, everything I did, I was learning something. Everything I did. Yeah. The things that my parents told me not to do, that I went out and did, whether it was build a go-kart or build a raft or go in the lake when you weren't supposed to, everything I did was learning something. Yeah. And what I'd like young people, younger than me, to realize is that the world is huge and life is long. Yeah. Life is not, people like to say, oh, isn't the world small? What a small world. That's one way to look at it. But see, I got a different view. Yeah. I think the appreciation goes the other way. Like, I think if every human lived to be 200-300 years old, I think we'd have a lot less assholes.
I would agree with that.
Because see, if you're only going to be around for 60, 70 years, you can be an asshole for 20, 30 years and think you can just keep running around and get away with it. They won't catch up to you. But if you're going to be around for 200, 300 years, you're going to watch whose toes you step on. Yeah. See, so I'd rather look at it like life is long and everything I do is going to eventually come back on me somehow.
See, that's the difference between the 40s and 50s, because I'm in this mindset that life is short and I only have I have a lot of stuff that I want to do.
That's all true.
Before I'm gone.
That is all
for
true.
Sure. Yeah.
But I don't know. It's like, like I said, the world is a big place. Yeah. It's not a small world. It is so huge. There are so many places to visit. There are so many
things to do.
Kinds of people, in the sense that we like to say we're all the same. We are. I get that is a truism. It's not, you can't stretch that. But beyond that, if you can get out, there are so many shades of colors in between. I always like to say, I don't want to close my eyes to anything. And I don't want to put headphones on, because I always want to be able to see the colors in between the colors. And I want to hear the sounds in between the sounds. I don't ever want to block out anything, even though sometimes it's annoying. Right. Well, I want to hear that screech when it's coming towards me so I can get the fuck out of the way. And that's metaphorical as much as it is literal. You know what I'm saying?
Totally. Well, and I like seeing the bad weed as much as I like seeing the good weed, to be honest with you. And it's a funny statement.
Why do you like seeing the bad weed?
So I like seeing the bad weed because I like contrast, and I feel like you can appreciate the good stuff if you can see. So you want to see it all.
There is no light without the dark.
Right? There is none, right? And so if I can see the worst stuff,
right,
and a lot of ugly stuff, which I still like ugly weed, right?
Wait a second. How do you get away with saying that?
I
still
absolutely.
Like ugly. Oh, you mean, but it's ugly, but it smokes good.
But it smokes amazing, right? There's plenty of stuff out there.
I thought you were saying I like shitty weed.
No. I do not like shitty weed. I like amazing weed, but the look isn't always a qualifier for me. Of course. It does, and I think you're the same way. It's like, we're a little bit older than these new guys, and social media wasn't a thing. And I think that played a huge role into me believing that and seeing the stuff that I saw growing up. It wasn't always the good weed that I wanted to buy, the good looking weed.
You just made me think, you really refined a thought that I've been saying over the years. A good friend of mine, DJ Short.
Yes.
Famous for the blueberry and others, which I can't remember.
Yeah. The flow.
Yep. Right. He once said to me, and he says this in public.
Yep.
He says, I breed for only one characteristic. Do you know what that is?
Effect.
Absolutely.
Effect.
And why do we use cannabis? Because of how it makes us feel.
Exactly.
So if you can't isolate that's the most important factor above the smell, now we just said, we're not going to smoke shitty weed, okay? Mm-hmm. But when I make weed and when I decide to make a cross, you know how many times I've crossed strawberry cough and the outcome was not better than the strawberry cough? And because it wasn't better, I threw it in the dumper. Mm-hmm. And I've never made anything better with the strawberry cough to this day.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like it's another Skittles, because Skittles is the same thing. There's a lot of stuff that has Skittles in it, but is it better than Skittles? That's subjective, but and there's it's
about the high.
Yeah, it's about...
And my bell, we all got a bell, and that's exactly why most of these hybrids just don't do anything for me.
Yeah.
Because the breeders were not focused on simply the effect. It was second, third, fourth, fifth of all these things. They all have to come
first,
into alignment.
First, it's got to look good, right? And that's the worst. That's the worst approach to all this, right?
And then it smokes good. Oh yeah, it gets no man.
Oh, it's got white ash.
No, and you know what? I want to buy the tomato that has the funky veins, the heirloom tomato.
Right, that's broken open a little bit.
It's only going to last 3 days in your house, and it's going to go bad.
It's already started to split. That's the one.
That's what you mean by I still like ugly weed.
100%.
So, there you go.
Yeah, and it's funny because Dave Mesford, I don't know if you ever met Dave Mesford. He did Canacon, long hair.
He just passed.
On 420.
Yeah. What was his nickname?
Dave Dammit.
Dave Dammit, thank you. Yeah. Yes. You said the last
name,
and I'm like,
Dave Dammit.
There you go. Yeah, he was a character. I liked him.
He was a character, but I interviewed him a week before he passed. And it affected me so much because I realized I've been breeding for flavor the last 5 years, really focused on flavor. I'm a chef.
It's important.
I love flavor. It is important. But at the end of the day, and my justification for that, because before that it was all about effect.
That's what their first assumption is. Right. That's what their first impression is.
And as a breeder, you're like, oh, this smells amazing. Oh, it tastes amazing. But I lost sight of that a little bit. So now we've kind of refocused over the last few months. It's like, okay, we need to really focus on effect and how these things make you feel, because that's really the most important thing at the end of the day. Yes, flavor is important. Yes, the way it looks important. Yes, the yield is important. But if we can just put a little more focus on that effect.
And that is the hardest because it's probably the most subjective, and
it is to the individual.
It varies the most.
Right.
From person to person. You give people strawberry cough, they're going to go, oh yeah, that's a berry. All, but if you ask them how it makes you feel, you could get 100 different answers.
For sure.
So,
that's why testing and sharing it with so many people is so important.
But there's no baseline for effect.
Right.
Right.
Well, there is on certain effects,
for you.
There is for me.
But that baseline is going to be different for me.
Right. Yeah,
so
but
what you got to do is,
agree.
so you know what? Mm-hmm. So you're breeding, I like to say when you're smoking weed, you're smoking the breeder.
Yeah.
Right.
For sure.
So really what breeding should be about, this is what I like and this is why.
Yeah.
Because this is my art.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm. It's a representation of yourself, right?
Well, it all is. Yeah. And underlying all of it, there's a motivation behind why you chose to propagate that strain.
Yeah.
Right? And that reason should be because it rang your fucking bell.
Yeah, totally.
You know?
Absolutely. Yeah, and DJ Short's always said that. It's all about effect. He's been preaching that for a long time. I think it's funny how many of us older guys have experience with DJ Short and his words of advice. You know, I was so hyped up about tissue culture 13, 14 years ago, you know, when we first got these kits. Like
I remember hearing about it. I was like, oh, nobody's going to do that.
Right. Well, I was like, okay, well, I saw the potential. Like this light bulb went off and I'm like, we can bank all the genetics. I want to be breeding these amazing things. And I want to be able to save everything. We can clean this stuff and all, you know, which isn't true. And it's not as easy as, you know, I wanted to make it. Bill Graham, he's the one who got me excited about tissue culture. I was like, okay, this dude does tissue culture. This is exciting, right? And he sells these home kits and all this other stuff. Well, I went to DJ Short and I sat down to him, next to him at a cup and I looked over at him and we're talking about tissue. I'm like, tissue culture, man, it's the new thing. It's the wave. And he's like, they've been doing tissue culture for years.
Of course.
And what they do is his tissue culture, he's like, yeah, you take a cut and you take it in the spring, you put it out every year, you let it go, get the vibration of the earth, you let it grow as fast as it possibly can with the most vigor, and then you take a cutting, and that is your tissue culture. And
exactly.
He shit on the whole idea for me for tissue culture. I was like, oh man, he ruined it in the moment.
You know what it is? But it's a field method of tissue culturing.
It is, and it's very smart, right? It's very, very,
it's very, you don't really need that many seasons.
No.
The way I was presented to it was Dr. Kenobi.
Yeah.
You know, online, you ever hear of a guy, Dr. Kenobi?
Yes.
And he used to garden up in Carpinteria.
Mm-hmm.
And he stabled all of my legacy genetics for me for a while. And he told me that a good way to do it is, you know, in the summertime, when you grow moms and they all grow over 6 feet tall very easily, very quickly.
Right.
And you got plants that now are growing multiple inches a day.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What you do is you just simply, you grow a plant over 6 feet tall is what he said. You grow a plant over 6 feet tall, and then you take a clone from the top of that, of the last couple of inches, right? Yeah. And that if you do that a couple of times and then you grow that mother out, put it out in the sun, let it grow to 5-6 feet tall, it's doing 2 inches a day, take the top off of that. By the time you do, I don't know whether they said 2 or 3 times, by the time you do that 2 or 3 times, you've cleaned the genetic pool.
Yeah.
Because it's growing so fast that it doesn't have enough time to pass the systemic pathogen or whatever it is.
If it's in the vascular and you're able to get past that, which is like kind of where meristem tissue culture is at, right? Like you're outgrowing these things. And I think you can outgrow a lot of things. I don't think you can outgrow everything, but you can outgrow a lot of it. And I think that they've been doing that for 30, 40 years, probably, maybe longer, and probably with other crops as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Which you see, we coined a term for it. People started calling it genetic drift.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as genetic drift. What it actually is it's more like passing around STDs. Mm-hmm. So in the early days, nobody had a good environment.
Yeah.
Nobody. Mm-hmm. In the wintertime, I'd grow in the attic.
Yeah.
And there'd be no snow on my roof. And in the summertime, I'd grow in the basement. And there was mold and dirt and dust. Yeah. And I'd give clones to people. And people would grow in barns. Yeah. And what you're doing is you're passing around every pathogen, every anti-positive thing, and then you clone susceptible plants. And those plants become more susceptible. And that's not genetic drift. And another thing that I experienced recently is morphing.
Yeah.
10 years ago, I wouldn't have believed that I can give my strawberry cough or my grape ape to somebody and they grow it in a style that is so far from the way I treated the plants that in a few generations, I got the strawberry cough back. I grew it out and it was strawberry. Like every bud I smoked, whether it was this big or not, it was strawberry cough.
Sure. Look different.
But now it grew these long, thin buds it had morphed. Now, and it didn't smell as good, and it didn't have as much resin on it. Genetic drift? No, it wasn't genetic drift. It was because she was growing with synthetic newts.
Yeah.
She was growing under low light conditions. She was cloning weak moms.
Yeah.
And that all added up to a morphing into a different plant.
But I think over time, you look at, so OG Kush, the Ghost OG and the Josh D OG, I had them labeled as these two things. And I got them from two different people. One came from up in Washington and the other came from my buddy in LA. And you grow them side by side and they were different plants. They looked different plants, right? You smoked them. They were similar. You could tell they were related, but you'd probably say, it's not the same bud for sure. Especially the finished product was a little bit different. One definitely yielded more with bigger buds and one was smaller. And so they take these different paths in life, and whether it's, epigenetics or whatever you want to call it, I would say that it's going through and, all these things happen to this plant. It's just like a person. It's a living thing, right? So as it goes
experiences
through,
that it goes through, you're passing them along, and nobody had ideal conditions.
And does tissue culture clean that completely? I don't think so, but
I don't know. But I know that once my stuff was passed along, I made an agreement with Dark Heart Nursery a bunch of seasons ago, and they were really nice to take on a couple of my actual cultivars along with the strawberry cough and the grape ape, which I carry, but they're not mine. And they put it all through their lab, and none of it had hop latent virus, and
nice.
So this is what's funny. So I gave them the strawberry cough that I got back from Mama Funk.
Yeah, she
started a clone company. That's why I gave it to her. And then I also see people are like, you don't have the strawberry cough. We know you lost it. I'm like, I've given it to 100 good friends. It's so easy to get back.
Right.
I make a call to my buddy, to my German friend in New York, and I have him mail it back to me. Like, I know, right? I know I'm getting it back from the same fucking guy I gave it to, and I gave them both to Dark Heart.
Yeah.
And they both tested the same, but they grew differently.
Yeah.
And so I chucked the one that I got back from Mama Funk, and I kept the one, and I still give it out to this day. And it's the big wide leaf. They don't even grow 3 or 4 feet tall.
But genetically, it could be identical. It should be identical.
They were. That's what I mean. They were
genetically identical.
Yes.
But
they didn't grow the same.
Yeah, I mean,
they had
systemic bacteria. There's all these things in the plant as it grows and progresses through life. And all these things happen to it. You stress it out, you beat it up, or one person does and the other person doesn't, or vice versa. I mean,
well, whether it's intentional or unintentional, we've been bioengineering plants since we started agriculture. And people have seen pictures of the first corn plant. It doesn't look anything like corn. Yeah. And that was nothing but plant selection, right? So you can select. What if we don't select? Like you said, right?
Yeah.
What if we don't select? So there's all kinds of representations out there that are accidental.
Yeah.
Some of them, as in strawberry cough, turns out to be great.
There's a lot of accidental stuff out there that some people take credit for or whatever, but even bag seeds, lots of bag seeds out there. And some of the best stuff that's come down, we're talking bag seeds. Yeah.
The old Grateful Dead story about the
Chem 91.
Where the Chem came from.
Yeah.
Good old Chem father.
Yeah. Speaking of Chem, I got that sour diesel. I met up with this guy, Dave Brutal Arrow. And I sometimes think maybe my mind's playing tricks on me. Like I remember it different than how it really was.
Of course.
Sour diesel was like that, right? So I've seen all these samples over the last year because I talk about it on my podcast so much. So every time I go to an event, someone has a bag of sour diesel.
You had AJ on, right?
What's that?
You had AJ on.
No, not yet.
You've never had AJ?
I have not yet had AJ. We will get AJ on.
AJ's for his moniker. You know what AJ stands for, right?
Asshole Joe.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, we need to get AJ on it for sure. And so I'd seen a bunch of samples of sour and they were all real gassy and they didn't have what I consider sour
complexity.
Diesel. So in my nose, in my mind, I'm going, something's going on here. Maybe it's my mind that's playing tricks on me. This is sour. Because it looked like sour. It smelled sour-ish with a really heavy chemi smell, but it didn't have that citrus, the funk,
fruit behind the piney, the fruit behind the pine.
And you didn't even have to squeeze nugs. You'd open the bag and it would punch you in the face. So this guy, Dave, comes up to me. He's really got it. And we're talking about doing a drop-in metric with it. because he has 10 pounds of it and it's so good. I just want to share it with the world. If I could just buy the 10 pounds and give them out to everybody, I would, right? But I feel like that's something we could do a metric drop with, and I stand behind his flower. It's just amazing. And to see it again, now I'm like, okay, cat piss is the real. I remember cat piss too, and I've seen a whole bunch of that. But that sour is special. So, and I think there's so many things that I haven't seen in years, but they're locked into your brain, into your palate. And
as you were talking about flavors and all those important things, I started thinking about the whole controversial issue about synthetic fertilizers, and I was like, you want to make people mad?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I do. I just want to get information out there that's true. I think that's the truth is important.
Well, unfortunately, we do live in a world where truth is subjective.
Sure. And people get hurt feelings quite often. And I think, but that's okay. I think we need to not be afraid.
Truth is subjective.
Yeah.
There are no undeniable truths anymore.
Yeah.
I'm joking. Look, I have an innate sense. I grew up in the country.
Yeah.
I grew up with a vegetable garden.
Yeah.
And we didn't use Miracle Grow.
What do you guys use?
It was just natural amendments, and then you just watered it. You didn't need a lot of food. It
Compost.
got it from the earth. You didn't need to do nothing. We had fertile soil.
Yeah.
You didn't add very much to it. You just tilled it over every year, and you planted, and the shit grew, and it was organic.
Yeah.
And you know what? I think it has something to do with the skepticism over the certification of organic. I know that has something to do because people are so skeptical these days. I have to analyze all information before I make my decision.
Yeah.
Well, that's because you don't understand that there are undeniable truths. See, they don't exist anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's all muddied.
It's all muddied.
It's all muddied.
It's all
intentional
very confusing.
And unintentional.
Yeah.
The conspiracy industrial complex is just as evil as the military industrial complex and the pharmaceutical industrial complex. They all prey on the impressionable and the weak. And, they prey on us all.
Well, and social media has made it very easy to do so, right?
Absolutely. It's no excuse, though.
It's no excuse.
That's right.
It's no excuse. Yeah, there's no excuse for this. But yeah, we live in a very strange time, to say the least.
Food, you'll get people to agree with you that when you read a food label, right, if it has words that you can't pronounce on it, you don't need to know what they are, but you that's not good for you.
You probably don't want to be consuming it.
So how come you can live with the fact that you're okay with feeding your plants, which you're going to put in your body, and you read the label and it has those same words that you can't pronounce and you don't know what they are? So get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Now, look, I'm not taking away your right to do whatever the fuck you want, to sell whatever, to grow whatever. I don't fucking care.
Yeah.
But don't debate me that those chemicals equate to the lack of them, to the absence of them. So that's all, It doesn't have to be veganic.
Well, no, your name is synonymous with veganic. When I just as much as strawberry cough, if I hear the word veganic,
I pioneered it for the cannabis.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know what? Look, as much as money is not my motivation, I do things for myself. Mm-hmm. And you know what? I thought when I stumbled on veganics, because I had some friends that were total crunchy hippies.
Yeah.
And he was a vegan. And he grew veganically. And he comes to my house one day and he says, man, Canada just came out with this veganic soil. And they had this BioTerra Plus. It was only available for a couple of years because it had 3 different types of bark, 3 different types of sphagnum. And each one of those 6 components were milled to 5 different consistencies. Oh. So it was its own aeration. Mm-hmm. You could never come. And then one of those materials became illegal to import into the United States. So they stopped selling it. So anyways, long story short, I tried it. And at the time I was using Canna nutrients, which are veganic. There's no animal byproducts. There's no animal products. And it's also organic. Mm-hmm. And so that very first crop that it wasn't loaded with bat guano and bird guano and fish emulsion and, all the good stuff, well balanced, was the cleanest weed that I'd ever smoked in my life. And what I didn't know was it's all about heavy metal content.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And that's what I learned when I actually created Vegamatrix. And I sent in our first lab sample of the first weed it wasn't the first weed I grew with it, but it was the one to get the certs that we were going to publish for the nutrients and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And we sent the weed into a lab to do heavy metal testing. And guy called me up and he's like, Kyle, you're not going to believe this. The tests came back zeros and everything. And right away I went, there's no such thing as zero. You're right. He said, we had to recalibrate the machine from parts per million to parts per billion. And your stuff comes in at 200 to 600 parts per billion of arsenic, cadmium, mercury, and lead. That's 1,000 times less than any ppm rating, even if it's 0.1 or 0.01 or 0.00 something parts per million, which is all organic weed is in the parts per million. Mm-hmm. The best weed still tests, and that's perfectly legal. But I found a way to grow weed that produced produce that had only imperceptible amounts.
Yeah.
And I wanted to share that. And one day I had a friend at my house, Billy Blackburn. He created the Easy Clone machine.
Yeah.
And they were on their way down to a show. And he stopped at my house with his whole crew and he said, man, I'm so fucking stoned, man. Your weed is so good. You should make your own nutrients. And it clicked. And I was like, I need to share this. And I found a way to do it. And that was my motivation, was to put something in a bottle that was clean, And I got all wrapped up in people thinking I think it's the best and I'm better than everybody. And I got pigeonholed into this fucking thing. And I'm glad to be free of it. And now I grow with minimal animal byproducts.
Yeah.
I use a really amazing so I had to find a new nutrient. My nutrient company went under about 3 years ago after 8 years of solid business.
Wow.
And so I had to find a new nutrient. Mm-hmm. And I've pretty much used them all.
Yeah.
I mean, except for the newest versions of companies that have already been out.
And most of those are actually better than they used to be.
Today's salts are not what salts used to be. And the heavy metals are much lower and they're produced at a much higher quality. So I use Organics Alive now.
Nice.
And this is truly a new tech in that when he designed it, he had to do the white papers and create a new category of fertilizers before the California Department of Agriculture would license it and allow him to sell it as a fertilizer.
Wow.
And that category is microbial fermentation byproduct. Nice. And if you look at the derived from, that's the only ingredient. Microbial fermentation byproduct. I can't simplify that for you.
Yeah.
But I will tell you that it contains 0 salts and 0 heavy metals. So I went from low salts and low heavy metals to 0 salts and 0 heavy metals.
Nice.
I'm pretty happy with it.
Yeah, the flower's really good. The effect is amazing.
Thank you.
So yeah, and it's funny because some flower gets you tight behind the eyes where it feels like you're pulling your face, others where it's like narcotic. And then you have the stimulants that lean on the sativa side, the super silver hazes, that have the Colombian in them or whatever it is, these stimulant or African stimulants. And this is like, feel good weed. I feel good.
Inputs determine outputs.
Yep.
It's the same thing with our bodies. Mm-hmm. You know how great you feel if you eat really good for a week or so.
Yeah.
And you know how bad you feel. It's the same thing for your plants, man. And that effect is because it's clean.
Right.
And sometimes people say, they get flavors off of strains that they never had because the heavy metals, they mask terpenes and they raise the combustion temperature of the weed. So as my cherry cools and it wants to extinguish, the higher the heavy metal level counts in there, the earlier it's going to extinguish and you're going to need to relight it. Mm-hmm. My joints, usually once you light it, I can talk for 3 to 5 minutes and it's still lit because it just keeps getting cooler and cooler and cooler and cooler. And it hasn't reached the combustion temperature because it doesn't have any heavy metals in it.
Right. Nice.
Yeah. Cleanliness and effect is everything.
Yeah.
Then taste, smokability, I call it.
Yeah.
Right after that is smokability. You don't want to, you want to pick it up again.
Yeah.
That's how the jars get empty, right? That's the test, right?
The jar is
test,
empty. Yeah, absolutely.
You know? So
we do the jar test here.
of course.
For sure.
We're baked right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel great. And it's like I'm baked, but we smoked all day yesterday. I mean, I smoked a lot yesterday I had to wear sunglasses.
We have to mention that we just spent 2 days at the 20th annual Emerald Cup.
We did.
That's why I'm a little froggy in the throat.
Yeah. You did a lot of interviews there. What do you think?
Oh, man, it's such a good time.
It was a really good event. I think there was a lot of skepticism going into the event from a lot of people. Were like, it's going to Oakland. We're going from hippie to hip hop. I heard that multiple times. And, you know, because I'm from here, it's so local in the area. People were like, is everyone's car windows going to get broken in? No car windows got broken in the first day. I don't know about Sunday, but I know the first day there was no windows broken. I think the city really embraced the event, which I love it. I love the fact that the Oakland City. I felt welcomed. Yeah, the people from Oakland and, you know, the people that count were like welcoming Emerald Cup, which is great. And I feel like so many of us showed up. There were a lot of people from the industry. You know, you never know how events are going to be, but I try to be as optimistic as possible.
Of course.
And I'm hoping Tim Blake made the right decision. And sure enough, he did make the right decision. It was a great event. It was much smaller, right? But it was more intimate. And I feel like those events are great, and it's building blocks, right? So this is the building block for what's to come. We can do this again next year, and let's do it a little bigger, and the year after that, and a little bigger than that, and turn it into another amazing thing. I mean,
you know, one of the keys was it was easy access to the outdoors.
It was.
So even though it was an indoor event, that easy access to outdoors, just a few steps away or a minute walk or two.
You go smoke. They didn't want you smoking on the floor. So yeah, there was a guy flashing his badge.
I caught a couple of cops that caught me because I was so comfortable walking around with my bowl the whole time that I would walk off property. I'd go to check the van or something, or I had to go somewhere, and then I'd hit the bowl, and then I'd look up, and there was a sheriff standing on the corner, and didn't even want to look at me.
Yeah, Oakland is pretty mellow, and the police that were there were pretty cool. You know, I mean, they were pretty cool. You know, it's like because they didn't want you smoking inside, so I got a guy.
We did
2 strikes.
We got warned more than 2 times. For smoking.
He's like,
Ed
third
Rosenthal
strike, you're
smoked through
out.
the whole podcast.
Yeah, Brian from Vital got a badge flashed at him and a gun. And the guy was like, dude, you're on your 3rd warning.
Right, I heard about that.
Yeah. So, but I would say that the energy there was great. The people there, everyone was good times, good vibes.
I popped a tear.
Yeah.
You know, once or twice. I just, there's a lot of friction in any industry, I'm sure. But the thing is, I don't know if like when beer barons fight, if they actually end up in the same room partying with each other.
Yeah.
Or, people from the chemical industry, they fight and then they make up, but they don't end up in the same room talking about it and really getting over it.
Right.
Our culture does.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what this event was good for.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what all these events do is I saw people that I work with, like people from High Times that I hadn't seen in a decade.
I saw 4 generations of High Times.
Yeah,
it's pretty wild. Yeah.
And I finally got to spend some personal time with Tim.
Nice.
That was fantastic. I finally got to spend some personal time with Steve D'Angelo.
Steve's great. So is Tim.
And that was priceless. I got to spend more personal time with Ed. That was
Gotta
priceless.
Love Ed.
And that was priceless.
Ed, yeah.
But really, yeah, man, we interviewed so many, Josh, we just did so many people.
Yeah.
And it was work. And I got tired at the end of every day.
It was work, yeah.
But man, if I would do that once a month, and then I wouldn't have to work for a year. Seriously.
You just need a new magazine to pick you up. That's it. And there's so many events. Every month there's 2 or 3 events somewhere in the world.
That's
amazing events.
I just came from Barcelona from the Spannabis.
That's my event. I go there every year. I always have a booth with either myself or with, Greenhouse. It's been for the last few years. But yeah, and
that is great when you get to experience a non-American culture and see how people embrace the cannabis culture, and they're inquisitive. It's different because they all don't know somebody who smokes marijuana.
Right.
It's not, and not everybody even has an opinion on it. So sometimes you get to just expose yourself as an emissary, and that feels good. It's a fresh, oh, you do this. Oh,
totally. And Spanibus is one of those amazing things where you get people from all over the world coming together. So I see my friends from every continent that has people on it, except for Antarctica.
It's very centralized.
But yeah,
as the globe goes.
It is. And people are looking forward to go to that event and talking about culture, going out to dinner, eating together, going to the event. A lot of genetics are sold there. I sell seeds there. You know, it's always a good time. And I just can't wait for the next year every time. It's like one of those ones. I haven't had a bad Spanibus experience ever. Like,
I haven't had a bad Emerald Cup experience.
No, me neither.
Emerald Cup, you know, I've had a bad High Times Cup experience, meaning it wasn't so great. Or
we've had a few High Times, you know where they just
never had a bad Emerald Cup experience.
Yeah.
And I thought I was going to miss Sonoma more than I did, but
Oakland was okay.
We brought the vibe, is what happened. We brought the vibe, and
there are so many OGs there. If the OGs weren't there, it wouldn't have been the same, right? All the guys from back in. I mean, I've been seeing these people at events forever,
right?
You know,
I mean, Swami and Keith and Dale Geringer and Dale Dale Sky Jones, and you know, I mean. It was a cornucopia of,
and the old High Times staff. There was Craig Coffey and
Bobby
Melissa
Black.
And Bobby Black. Bobby and April were there, you know, and then we got Ellen. She's like the new High Times.
Was she there?
She was there. And it was great talking. I got to catch it. So her and I keep on missing each other at events. Like we've been at the same event multiple times, and she has her book out. I got my book out. So we were finally able to like talk for a little bit, which is great. And seeing
that would be great. I'd love to get her impressions on how High Times is getting things done, because it was hard back then.
Yeah,
it wasn't easy. You know, we were everybody was a bunch of stoners. You know,
for sure.
And I had my first panic attack that I don't have them regularly, but I didn't even know what one was. I mean, after deadline, all of a sudden, like deadline is like 6 days away, and you haven't started your work yet. And I was like, I'm going home. I didn't even shut off my computer. I didn't even tell anybody I was leaving. I was, oh, this is a panic attack.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah.
So, and yeah, it was.
It would have been great to have Malcolm there, because Malcolm, I love Malcolm.
Right. Mr. Dan Sky.
Yeah, Dan Sky. He's a blast. He's always, you know.
He was at he photographed my wedding. I got married in Jamaica.
Amazing.
At the first High Times Jamaican Cup. And Rick Cusick.
Yep.
Married us.
He's
a minister of the Church of Light.
Yep.
And the rules of the Church of Light are you have to drink water and not be a dick. And so he officiated our wedding.
Amazing.
And all 7 tribes of Rastafari were there, because High Times had just brought them all together for the cup. And the Prime Minister, Mark Goulding, was there. And so there was 20 people we knew at our wedding, and there was 300 people that we didn't know.
Wow.
And then they broadcast it live over Jamaican radio. And so my wife wasn't Mrs. Ornstein; she was Mrs. Kushman.
Nice.
You know, it was fucking crazy.
Yeah, Jamaica's an amazing place.
So I didn't even mention he photographed our wedding, and I have some amazing photographs that Malcolm took.
Really cool.
Oh my God.
Yeah, when we were featured in High Times, he flew in, stayed at my house for a couple of days back in 2012, I believe it was, and took him on tours of grows back then. It was really trap still, believe it or not. 2012 is only 12 years ago, but it was pretty.
That's a lifetime ago.
A lifetime ago, you know, because we move at dog years, 7 years to every one in the cannabis space.
Right.
But yeah,
at least in gray.
Yeah. We're all getting gray. I shaved my beard, but if I grew a beard, it would all be gray. And
it's got to go somewhere.
Yeah. Seriously. Yeah. You know, it's part of the whole aging process. And
hey, I'm proud to be here, to be alive, to be well.
Yeah.
To be, you know, the plumbing all works and I can automobile myself and I'm good to go.
I mean, I feel like gratitude is such an important thing.
Remembering where we came from is part of gratitude.
Yeah. And no matter how much money you have or what kind of problems you have, you can always live in gratitude. I think that's another big takeaway.
I like to say, choose to live in the light.
Yeah.
And if I'm going to assume something, I'm going to assume something good.
Right.
Don't hit me with that. Did you hear? Don't you know? No, I don't know. And neither do you. So I don't want to hear it.
Totally. So how's your podcast going?
Well,
I mean, it seems like you're all over the place with guests and doing interviews. I saw it over the weekend. It was pretty wild.
I'm lucky. I fell in with Homegrown Cannabis Co. Like it's almost 10 years ago now.
Yeah.
And we've done just thanks to my buddy Matt, who actually goes by Nate Hammer, 420, you know, and he's just, we've been workhorses and hundreds, if not thousands of hours of video, both entertainment and educational is online at Homegrown Cannabis Co. And then just recently, I think maybe about a year ago, he had an idea for what is my third podcast now. GWA, we like to say, I GWA, do you GWA? Stands for Grow Weed at Home. You know? And I am the ultimate home grower advocate.
100%.
And really, it's kind of my last bastion of the fight. There's plenty of people out there fighting for legalization, and I've fought for legalization. And I have legal, I don't want to get into how legal it is. Well, so my last bastion is, as we legalize across the country, you must recognize the right of home growers. Yeah. You know, most places do as they go along.
Most places do, but I think
Arizona did not for a few years.
Right.
And then they changed it. So for years, if you lived within 25 or 50 miles of a dispensary, you were required to buy your medicine.
Really sad.
It's wrong for so many reasons.
It's just
wrong for so many reasons. And so I've really just, you know, I talk the talk and I walk the walk, and I grow my own weed at home and I put it up online. And it was Matt's idea to create Grow Weed at Home with Kyle Kushman.
Nice.
And so, so luckily this was the greatest opportunity because we brought the podcast to the Emerald Cup, and we did 12 interviews over 2 days, and every interview was a hard hitter, was just a superstar.
Yeah.
And, you know, from Ed Rosenthal, Steve D'Angelo, Tim Blake, Andrew D'Angelo, and then the Delices.
Of course.
So the Delices, I just got to meet this weekend. Oh my God, they're so fucking cool.
Great people, both of them.
Oh my God. And we went out last night for a Peking duck. We all sat around the Lazy Susan, you know, and had Chinese food for an hour. Rich DeLisi, he's the longest serving pot prisoner who just got released.
32 calendar years.
He did 32 years.
32 years.
Of a 93-year sentence.
Right.
He'll forgive me if it wasn't that 90 number, but it was a 90.
It was almost 100, yeah.
It was a life sentence. Yeah. And he did 30-something years. And Last Prisoner Project just got him out. Another one of their successes, you know? And I do want to say before I finish this story that please don't poo-poo on Last Prisoner Project.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I met the Delices. Homegrown Cannabis Co. is sponsoring a movie about them. And it's called Santa Marta Gold.
That is so cool.
Because that's the strain that he pretty much smuggled the most, you know, that was the preeminent strain. And Matt, Nate Hammer, he's making the film. So, you know, all this wonderful stuff he's done, I have no doubt that it's going to be absolutely amazing. They just haven't quite, I think they were going to do a documentary, but I think it's evolving into a full-on biopic.
Wow.
You know? And man, just, I can't even get into a good mood when I'm talking about this. A man that lost 32 years of his life.
And I think 37 total years, but he served 32 years
I'm
straight.
getting dizzy. I mean, I'm literally getting a little bit, you know, so yeah, man. So I got to interview both of the Delices, and you know, that's just that kind of content is the stuff. Look, my show is called Grow Weed at Home.
Yeah.
Okay. And there's a theme, obviously, right? But you know, not everybody that I talk to grows weed at home or wants to grow weed at home, you know?
Right.
I mean, we had Jim Belushi on.
He grows weed at home.
And he grows weed at home, you know? So we follow the theme, but I also like to just, you know, it's more, I want to embrace the culture.
Yeah. I mean, having Rich on the show, Uncle Rick and Rick both, I've had them on multiple times. They're great people, but that's to me, that's what this is all about. That's why I do this. It's a good, I think it's a good way to tell a story and to share the whole picture of the industry. And there is no industry without that. Right. And that's the big, beautiful thing with, and it's really sad that he did so much time. And then we had Luke Scarmazzo, and together they've done over 50 years, which is longer than I've been alive. And
Eddie Lepp did a dozen.
Yeah.
Or a dime, and he's dead now. He would have lived for at least another 10 years or 20 if he hadn't had to go through that bullshit. So just realize how good we've got it now, and stop letting the perfect be, not letting things go forward, because nothing is ever fucking perfect. And sometimes you have to embrace positive for positive.
Yeah.
See the forest for the trees,
Baby steps are okay. I think that's another thing. We want to make leaps and bounds all the time, but sometimes it's just a small step.
You got to grow one plant before you grow before you go commercial. You got to, you got to do a lot of things before you can say, I know it all.
Yeah.
Not meaning I know it all, but meaning like I know enough.
Yeah.
I can get by now. I could teach some others.
Right.
I don't really know it all. It's.
No, I mean, for me, it's like I'm constantly learning. Every day I'm learning something new, or learning something I forgot.
Right.
So
this is a great atmosphere and a platform, for our industry needs more platforms.
Yeah.
And it's not just the growers, and it's not just the breed. And when I say just, what I mean is, there are other people like the DeLisis that if they didn't bring in tons and tons of weed, I wouldn't have been smoking weed at 12 years old, being able to get it all the time, except for the droughts. We had droughts every year. Every year there was a drought. Droughts. Month or two, you got to go on a clean break.
Yeah. Yeah, or smoke. I mean, there was brown weed maybe sometimes, but I wasn't really big on smoking the stuff that gave me headaches. Once I started smoking the good stuff, I did not want to go back.
Never look back. But it's also, it's also in an odd way. It's some of the people, like I mentioned Billy Blackburn earlier, who created the first commercial cloner for the Easy Clone.
Yeah.
And it's all these tech guys that we have to thank too in the early days that created they went through Operation Green Merchant.
Yeah.
Do you remember the guys that lost their inventories and lost their livelihoods?
Wolf Siegel.
Hydra Farm went through it.
Yeah.
A lot of personal people, because the Hydra Farm stock got taken and they couldn't pay back the inventory they'd taken in from all manufacturers, light manufacturers. You remember back in the day, the innovations, they were trying to sell us water-cooled lights. Man, they were trying.
So Agnetic still makes water-cooled lights. Yeah.
I'm sure that it's an advancement.
Yeah.
I brought it home and I hooked it up once with a I'm like, I shouldn't be building this. Yeah. I shouldn't be doing this. I should have a plumber in doing this.
Totally.
So, it's all of these advancements that we have to thank. The electricians that, some people are mad that, they charge higher prices when they know that they're installing it at a grow. But man, back in the day, when I had somebody to be thankful for that I knew that could hook up the voltage I needed, and he wasn't going to tell anybody, I was happy to give him an extra $500.
Yeah.
Totally. It's all of that. So, I still have his name in my phone.
That's great.
Henry,
Nice. Yeah, I mean, back in the day, we had to do it all. Now with places like this, I could never do it all. I have a great team, luckily, and
well, this is a dare. Look, you've created a James Loud is a persona. Right? And that takes work because
James Loud is so much more than one person, even though it's a name.
Of course.
Right?
That's what I mean.
Yeah,
that's
totally.
what I mean is when you if you break it down about how much work it took before you felt comfortable putting up a neon sign with your name on it.
Yeah.
You had so many people help get you there. If you hadn't met people, or if you'd met a few more people who stabbed you in the back or didn't lead you the right way, you might not be here either.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty wild. The journey's been wild.
got to appreciate the journey, man.
Yep. Well, and I mean, I was very fortunate to get good weed at a young age and fall in love with it. And,
me too. I come from New York. In New York, we got great drugs.
Yeah.
I was doing good drugs when I was far too young.
Well, Grateful Dead is like from the Bay Area. So we had access to pretty much anything and everything and the best of it. So if you had the chance to go back to your younger self and give them one piece of advice, what would that advice be?
Really? I've never been asked or answered this question.
Nice.
You know, what popped into my head just shows my fucking priorities. Don't be shy in front of women. You know, I used to use this as one of my speeches. Like I've given so many at normal conferences, at hemp fests, at all these bashes. You got to get up and you got to say something, right? And one time I used to say to people, you know, don't be afraid of the cops. Don't shy away from the cops. What you got to do is when you see a cop on the corner standing there doing his thing, make eye contact with him and say, "Hi, officer, how are you doing today?" And what that does is it makes you getting used to having an interaction with the cops so that the next time that you're walking around, you got a backpack full of weed like I do, and you make eye contact with the cop, instead of looking away like you'd be natural to do, you'll go, "Hi, officer, how was your day?" And he'll go, "Very good." And you'll walk along. Now, that may or may not have a big implication, but so I used to say it's just like talking to women.
Yep.
You know, you just got to get used to it, you know? And once you get used to it, you know, that's the thing. When you can make eye contact with that girl that you think is pretty or that you want to talk to, and you make that eye contact and you don't look away, that's the one thing that I would tell my younger self.
Nice. That is an original answer. That's great. I love it. Yeah. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, man. It's been great having you here. It was great seeing you at Emerald Cup. I feel like we got to do this again soon.
Anytime.
If people want to find out more about Kyle Kushman, where should they go?
Well, first and foremost, I'm like Homegrown Cannabis Co. And I don't mean that to sell the seeds, because that's what they do is sell seeds. I just mean there's so much educational content there.
Yeah.
I never really had a crew. I didn't do that stuff on my own. It wasn't until I met Homegrown and they hired me to be a spokesperson. Man, there's just supercropping videos and seed, everything from how to plant the seed to how to water it to how to make your first nutrients to how, everything.
Yeah.
If you want to see me live, we do a weekly podcast and it's all over everything on YouTube and Spotify and all that stuff. That's the Grow Weed at Home. And, you want to connect with me live, it's Kyle Kushman 420 on Instagram.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I look forward to doing this again soon.
Yes, and you have an open invitation to come and visit me anytime.
Awesome.
And we got to get you on Grow Weed at Home as well.
Fantastic. I'll have to bring pictures of my home grow.
Awesome.
So yeah, good stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you.